Syria is in turmoil. A bloody civil war has raged for years, with neither side able to defeat the other. But underneath the dramatic news reports, another strange anomaly has come to light. At least 4 British men have been killed while fighting alongside al-Qaeda-linked militants in Syria. The British newspaper The Times has reported that 3 of the British nationals were killed in August as their group attacked the Syrian government forces near the northern city of Aleppo. The men are believed to be from London. The 4th man was killed 2 weeks later while trying to ambush a Syrian army position. These men were not alone. British intelligence agency MI5 estimates between 200 and 300 young British men have moved to Syria to fight against the government of President Assad. The intelligence agency also raised concerns that British militants would recruit new converts to their cause or even launch attacks within the UK itself. So, what's going on? Why have so many British men chosen to support a foreign revolution? And is it right for the UK government to do so little to prevent it? These are the simple questions we put to the British people. We began by finding out what the public know about who is fighting with the rebels against the Syrian government. Here's what they said. What do you know about who is fighting alongside the Syrian rebels against the Syrian government?
Well, I'm aware that I read this morning that there's quite a number of Iraqi citizens that have crossed the border to fight against the Assad regime.
They're backed, I believe, by Saudi Arabia.
Well, I don't think we do know, and I think that's half the problem. There's lots of parties, I think, involved, probably on both sides, all trying to meet their own ends with probably not one single goal. So everybody's after their own interests, I think, in that situation.
What do you know about who is fighting alongside the rebels against the Syrian government?
Not that much. There's a lot of, obviously, people are saying there are a lot of unsavoury, unpleasant people, al-Qaeda-linked people there. I'm sure there are lots of perfectly good people in there as well. I don't know enough about it, it's more than it's a mess.
I don't really know, to be truthful. I imagine mercenaries, other militants from other Middle East countries.
I'd stopped reading the newspaper in the mornings a while ago. But I seem to remember that there were reports that there were some militant Muslim groups that were fighting alongside the rebels. I'm not sure whether that's true or not, but I remember reading that.
An interesting mix of answers. We turn to our experts to find out who has travelled to Syria to fight with the rebels.
Basically, a rebel word for them is really small. Terrorists, fundamentalists, wherever they go, they aim to destroy, kill people, and just end up civilizations. So that's what I heard. Even we heard it before, but today, unfortunately, we are hearing it in Syria.
In principle, there are at least over 20 groups which are fighting against the government of Bashar al-Assad, and they range in political spectrum from just basically anti-Assad to Islamic extremism in the extreme. And of these groups, I think that perhaps the best known one is al-Nusra.
Every month, rebels upload hundreds of videos online. Some have included cutting open chests to eat their victims' hearts, as well as beheadings and executions. We wanted to see the extent to which the public are aware of these videos and what was their reaction. Every month the rebels upload hundreds of videos online. Some have included cutting open chests to eat their victims' hearts and beheadings and executions. Are you aware of these videos, and if so, what's your reaction?
I've heard briefly of this sort of thing. How true it is, I haven't the slightest idea. No idea at all.
Yeah, I've heard about the videos. I know that they're online a lot, and there's a lot of restrictions on how they publicise them. I'm not too keen on viewing them myself, but I know people that have, have, and I think it's good that the public know that it's happening, but not necessarily on the sites and places that they're being exploited.
I've heard of them on television. I think it's obviously inhuman, cruel. It's not the sort of thing we're used to in this part of Europe. If that's what they do, that's what they do, but we don't do it in this country, do we?
Every month the rebels upload hundreds of videos online. Some have included cannibalism as well as beheadings and executions. Are you aware of these videos, and what's your reaction to them?
I am aware from what I've read. I've never actually looked at the videos, and it's obviously, I suppose it gives us a taste of what's actually going on, but I don't know if it's helpful.
I think it's all bad, and whatever any of them are doing is bad. Just because one does one bad thing doesn't give them the right for the others to do a bad thing.
We're certainly aware of them. I mean, it's difficult to know, being the cynic that I am, how real they are. If indeed they are real, then that's quite an extreme scenario. And if ultimately, whatever the outcome of the Syrian situation is, those sorts of people could be in power, then I think we need to be very, very careful who we actually get into bed with politically.
Our experts shared their perspective on the extent to which these actions by rebels have registered in the public consciousness.
These videos, unfortunately, I was watching some of them, and some I couldn't. I just saw a few seconds and I had to switch the TV off. Reason being, even switch my laptop off, reason being, it's the images that I'm seeing. I couldn't believe it at the beginning, but then no, it's true, they are a nuisance. Even Mr. Putin named it, they are a nuisance. There's no way we can let these rebels and terrorist people to get away with what they have done with A, the civilians, B, with the Syrian army as well. All what they want to do is touch people, cut people, do every single thing that the mind cannot accept for them to satisfy their monstrous aims.
All of these rebels upload videos of one kind or another. There are about 4 or 5 extreme Islamic groups that regularly upload very, very gory, let's say, videos of executions and murders. I'd rather call it murder than execution, because the courts that they use are basically some rebel commander just accusing them, end of story, and then they're dead. Recently there was a Christian bishop that was accused of being un-Islamic. He wasn't, he was Christian, and they cut his head off, and they've videoed it, and there was an audience of about 300 or 400 cheering extremists. And I mean, you don't normally see on video chickens having their heads cut off, but these people appeared to me to be particularly distasteful.
Next, we looked into public reaction to the support for the rebels. We asked, if you found out that people here in Britain were flying to Syria to join the rebels, what would you feel we should do about it, if anything? If you found out that people here in Britain were flying over to Syria to join the rebels, what would you feel we should do about that?
Well, nothing you can do. I wish people wouldn't do that, but I can't see you can do anything about it.
I'm not sure that we should do anything about that, personally.
Well, we should obviously keep them under observation to make sure they don't bring their terrorist ways back to the UK.
Deport them and never let them come back to this country, because it could incur danger to our country, and that's what we're supposed to be protecting.
If you found out that people here in Britain were flying over to Syria to join the rebels, what do you feel we should do about that?
Again, it depends which of the rebels they're joining. I'm sure there are some perfectly reasonable groups. That would not be a problem. If they are joining jihadist groups, then I think probably take passports away. That's all you can really do.
I don't think we should do anything. If people want to do that, they can do it.
Something needs to be done, because I read yesterday, I think there's something like 200 odd people, and there's people as young as 16 guys that are going out there to fight. So it's, yeah, something needs to be looked at, because I guess in the future they're going to be the next line of threat to us here.
We turned to our experts to find out what they felt ought to be done in response to British citizens who have travelled to Syria to fight in the civil war.
For me to protect my local community, I would say my local community A, where I am living now in Great Britain, and B, in Syria. A, I will have to, if I know anyone who flew to Syria, or he is today in Syria, fighting and killing civilians, also killing the Syrian army, I will be calling straight away the local authority office and tell about them, because they shouldn't be in the Syrian land. Where they should be in the prison of their land where they belong to, that's A. B, about them being on the Syrian land. And what we should do, I would say the Syrian army is sorting the situation today. That's the best and concluded answer with regards to B.
If I found out that there were rebels flying out of Britain to go and fight against Assad in Syria, they're very likely to be Islamic extremists, and what they would be doing would be going to Syria to learn how to fight, how to kill, possibly how to make bombs, improvised explosive devices, and lots of terrorist techniques. So I would be very worried that when they came back, they would be bringing back with them killing techniques which could be used against me. I would be very worried, and what I would do in my local community is I'd be very wary of anyone that walked around looking like an Islamic extremist, and I would try to stay out of their way. But there isn't very much that one person can do. The British government are failing to act, they're failing to protect me and other citizens, so I would be very worried.
As we've already mentioned, recently at least 4 British men were killed while fighting alongside al-Qaeda-linked militants in Syria. But were the public aware of this? And if so, what was their reaction? Recently, at least 4 British men were killed while fighting alongside al-Qaeda-linked militants in Syria. Did you know that? And given that is actually a fact, what's your reaction to it?
I did know that. I'm not entirely surprised, as you read stories all the time about people that have been radicalised in this country leaving to fight abroad, so it wasn't a surprise to me when I read it.
They shouldn't be out there. It's not their problem. And if they're going out there helping the Taliban, then they're looked upon as enemies to this country.
Recently, at least 4 British men were actually killed while fighting alongside al-Qaeda-linked militants in Syria. Did you know that? And if you were, what's your reaction to that?
I am aware of it. This has been going on since time immemorial, hasn't it? Mercenaries, etc. I can't really, I don't understand it, why people would feel so strongly. Although perhaps we in the West, got our comfortable lifestyle, and perhaps we should get more involved, politically.
I didn't know that, no, but again, I want to be alarmed, because that's going to end up on their own doorstep, I'd imagine, further down the line.
No, I wasn't aware of that. I haven't read anything recently about the state of affairs there. I think it's very sad, very sad.
Why has there not been a more dramatic reaction to these facts in the UK from the public or from politicians? Our experts said this.
4 British people were killed in Syria, and this is, I believe, this is based on reports of the UN. But let's say, not based on the report of the UN, I would say much more than 4 people. It's been 2 years and nearly 7 or 8 months, the incidents going in Syria. What we've reached, over hundreds and hundreds of foreign nationalities, British, French, German, Belgians, were killed in Syria. That's from EU. We don't forget about the Saudis, about Qataris, about Kuwaitis, about Afghanis, so many different nations. went to Syria to fight over there. So no wonder for people being announced, because hundreds of people got killed before and no one wanted to name them.
The British press don't really like to talk about British people going to fight in mercenary wars overseas, and in fact you just occasionally get an article in a newspaper just basically reporting on British people going to fight in Syria. I was aware that not just 4 but about 20 or 30 were known to have gone to fight in Syria, and they were mostly of Islamic background, promoting extremist Islam rather than just fighting against a tyrannical organisation. And I know that obviously if you're going to get people fighting in a war, they're going to die. So it would be logical to assume that of the 20 that we're aware of, or 20 or 30 that we're aware of, maybe 4 or more had been killed.
Another point which is rarely made relates to the tools used for war. We asked, who do you think is arming and supporting the rebels in Syria?
Who do you think's arming and supporting the rebels in Syria?
Who do I think is arming them, supporting?
Yeah.
I've no idea at all.
I don't think we are, because they want us to arm them, and I don't think we are, because we don't want to get involved.
Who do you think's arming and supporting the rebels in Syria?
I can make educated guesses. Perhaps in the West, perhaps even the UK, potentially America. I don't really know. I don't really understand the relationship between the West and the Assad regime. One minute they're in favour, the next minute they're not in favour. So it could change from year to year.
I really don't know. I just don't know. I mean, so many arms about in this day and age. Everybody seems to have guns, so just suppose they come from all round. I don't really know.
Is there reliable evidence regarding who is actually providing practical support to the Syrian rebels? Here's what our expert said.
I would say every single country called itself a friend of Syria did support. So if we go back to all of the conference meetings, which is Friends of Syria, all of these countries pretended to be friends of Syrian people. I would say it's the opposite. They are not. If they are really friends of Syria, they should stop funding the rebels in Syria. So we've got the Saudis, we've got the Qataris, we've got the Turks, which is the best way to say it today, the Turks under the Erdogan government. Also, there's few countries as well from the EU. Also, we don't forget the part of the Americans.
Well, it's clear that Saudi Arabia and Qatar, Great Britain, the United States and Turkey are facilitating large amounts of armaments. Where and who they're supplying is unclear. The Western press are not saying who they're arming, and that's quite worrying. So they're getting their money from wherever they can get it. And recently, al-Nusra was cut off from American supplies and arms because of certain videos that they put on YouTube, one of them of which was a supporter of al-Nusra who cut out the heart of a soldier and ate it.
We asked one more central question. Would you like the British government to continue supporting the rebels in Syria? Here's what the public said.
Would you like the British government to continue supporting the rebels in Syria?
I would, but I think it needs to be very carefully done. We need to try and make sure that it's the good guys who end up on top of the pile, not the bad guys.
I don't know, because I don't know enough about it, and I don't know what the implications could cause to this country. And that's what we should be thinking about, is the people in this country, not the people out there, even though I think it's despicable what they're doing.
I would like to see the government take a slightly different view and perhaps not necessarily support anybody from a political point of view, but try to support them from a more sort of human point of view.
Would you like the British government to continue supporting the rebels in Syria?
I think we should give support. Quite how far that should go, I feel strongly we shouldn't have any direct military intervention, despite the horrendous crimes that are going on there, because generally when we intervene we don't seem to have a good exit strategy, and I just feel we make the situation worse, like this destabilisation in Libya. I'm not sure, you know, if that was wise going into Libya 2 years down the line.
No, I think they should leave it to Bashar al-Assad to sort it all out himself.
No, I can't see any point in that at all, because if you support them it's going to be a civil war, and you don't want that. It'll be even worse than it is now.
We invited our experts to consider whether, in their opinion, British official sympathy for the rebels was helpful or harmful to British interests.
I would say no, no, no. Instead of supporting the rebels in Syria, the Syrian government can sort these rebels, or can sort them out and solve the situation. Or what we want from the British government is place and invest in this money in Great Britain, instead of investing in rebels, killing civilians, destroying civilizations. No, just invest in this money in the education system and in the medication system. British government thinks they were supporting the rebels by the legal aims, but no, this money went to kill children and destroy the building and destroy the whole civilization of Syria. So 12,000 years old civilization being destroyed by rebels supported by a different countries A, B and C.
I'm actually someone who doesn't like war and doesn't like fighting and killing. I don't really see that Assad is going to be worse than all the other groups. In fact, he's dramatically better. He represents what I would call civilization, because Syria, as it stands under Assad, has institutions, it has law and order, it has courts. But the only people who are making any attempt whatsoever to emulate that desirable state of being are the Free Syrian Army. And when they come into contact with certain extremist terrorist groups, the terrorist groups attempt to arrest their hierarchy and execute them, even though they're supposed to be allies. So really and truly, no, I wouldn't like to see Britain arming, equipping, financing anything in Syria. I think that the status quo should remain. I think that the terrorist groups and the anti-Assad coalition, such as it is, should disarm, disband and go home.
Repeatedly, official comments have been made which indicate the British government supports the rebels' anti-administration terrorist activities in Syria. It is reasonable to believe this mood music directly influenced 4 men to fly to Syria, where they fought and died alongside rebels who have demonstrated inhumane violence against other human beings. For a country which claims to take the moral high ground against rebellion at home, it is remarkable that British politicians display sympathy for rebel acts abroad in Syria. Why have they done so little to prevent British citizens from joining a movement which, at best, is a foreign revolution, and at worst is guilty of war crimes? This is one simple question the British government seems determined not to answer.